My name's Tom Ross, and welcome to the Honest Entrepreneur Show, where I'm bringing you tried and tested advice to help your online business without any of the bullshit. Today, I'm talking all about 10 key steps and skills that you need to successfully launch your online business. Even if you already have an online business, I hope this episode is going to help you too, because it's going to let you reassess and maybe even relaunch what you're currently working on. I've been launching websites, businesses, and various online ventures since I was about 15 years old, which gives me 15 years of figuring this stuff out. What I'm trying to do today is condense all of this experience into a short 10 to 15 minute long video. So of course there's going to be extra detail. You might need to go do some extra reading, but I really want to condense down the golden nuggets that I picked up over 15 years of trial and error, learning from mentors, watching courses, reading articles, years and years and years of information. I want to pack it all down into one insightful, useful video to help you. So let's jump straight into it. Number one is actually take the time to define what audience you're serving, what value you're bringing them, how much you're going to be charging for your thing, and all of those key things. That always has to be the first step, right? So I'm going to give you an example. Maybe you are an artist, a hand letterer, something like that, and you decide, I'm going to start doing wall murals for a certain type of company, for startup companies, for example. I'm saying this because we've got a friend of ours coming in to do our wall here. But let's say that's your business model. So that's service and value I'm offering. I know who I'm going to be targeting, and I know how much I'm going to be charging. You have to start there. That's point one before you get ahead of yourself. Step two is to sit down and actually turn this into some kind of vague business plan. And I'm not talking a traditional business plan. You don't need kind of break even in year 3 and stupid corporate graphs or any of that stuff. But so many people dive headfirst into what they want to be doing, and they don't think about any of the maths around it. And trust me, I am not inherently a maths guy, but you need to do the basics. You need to work out, okay, how much do I need to be making per month to pay my bills, to live the life I want to live? And then from there, just reverse engineer that. Okay, so if you charge this much per product or service, how many of those do you need to do a month to break even? You know, what's your profit margin? What are your costs going to look like? Even if these things are fairly rough to start with, you've got to run the numbers, and you've got to know it's a viable business model, because you don't want to learn 2, 3, 6 months down the line that actually it's impossible for you to be profitable because your profit's so low on each one of these jobs that you could work 50 hours a day and you still wouldn't crank out enough work to actually have a viable business to support your life. So you've got to put in the groundwork to figure out that key business stuff. Number 3, and this is a big one, you have to validate your business idea. And by validate, I mean you need to actually test it in the real world. You need to test if people care about it, if they're willing to fork over their hard-earned money for this thing that you're offering. And the key here is you need to do it as quickly and efficiently and cheaply as possible. I highly advise that you go do some reading on MVPs, which are minimum viable products. This basically means you create the simplest, cheapest, quickest version of your idea that you can get out to the world, get out to the market to test if people care. You don't want to be behind the scenes spending tens of thousands of dollars, getting out loans, spend a year working on this thing, invest all this time and money and effort, get it out to the world, and suddenly no one gives a shit. It's much better to get a cheap, simple version out after a few weeks even, and then instantly if someone doesn't like it, or the world doesn't care, the market doesn't care, you can adjust and you can go from there. So validate your concept. I'm going to throw in a little Seth Godin quote here, but to paraphrase, he basically says, tell your idea to a random selection of 10 people. So it could be some family, some friends, some strangers, people on social media. If it's really a good idea, they will not only be interested, they should start to tell others. If all 10 of them are like, oh yeah, that's great, like good for you, great idea, but they don't buy, they don't tell any friends, and it doesn't spread at all, then they're just being nice and the idea probably sucks. Number 4, as I just touched on, is be agile and pivot easily. Don't get emotional. Don't get stuck on this idea just because you think it's great. If the market and the world is telling you it sucks and they don't care, don't be afraid to go back to the drawing board or at least try a different angle. So maybe one element isn't working, so you revise it based on trying to validate it, trying to test it against the market. You change it up a bit, and then you try it again. You get it back out there. You see if people respond differently. You see if they care more. You see if they're willing to pay for it now. Doesn't work? Okay, you pivot, you try something else, you try it again. This phase is all about agility. You've got to react quickly. You've got to, as I say, don't get down, don't get emotional. Just be in proactive mode. You have to adjust, you have to change things up. You have to keep seeing what sticks and what doesn't. Number 5 is think one step ahead, not 10. This is a very common mistake I see so many entrepreneurs doing. They're off already either living in the Bahamas or thinking 3 to 5 years down the line in terms of how they're going to manage the business when they have 30 staff and they're earning millions of dollars, and they're kind of dealing with problems that haven't even arisen yet. The odds are stacked against them. They probably won't make it to that point they think they will. What they need to deal with is step 1. They need to make the first sale, not the 1,000th sale. I'm guilty of this myself. I know in the past I would sit down hypothesizing, drawing out endless business plans, just saying, okay, so if I have this many members a month, I retain this many, and I keep adding 2 members a day, I'm going to be a millionaire in 18 months' time. And I'd literally sit and do the maths on this and draw graphs and imagine how the business will look and start kind of planning my week to week's work in this imaginary business, which I'm never going to reach. The whole thing was just horribly naive. What I should have focused on is, okay, how do I move the needle now? How do I get that next sale? How do I try and scale that little bit tomorrow instead of 18 months' time? Number 6 is realize that your expectations should map to what you're able to put in. And also realize part-time typically won't cut it. I've seen people try and start businesses on an hour of work a day or 2 hours a week or whatever. And generally that's never going to work. Getting a business off the ground takes a tremendous amount of work and sacrifice, as I've touched on in previous episodes of this show. So really do try and think about what you can give. And it's going to be different for every person. If you're 20 years old and your parents are supporting you, you haven't got a job and you've got all the time in the world, great. Go put that into getting your business off the ground. It's different if maybe you're a single mum and you're looking after a family and you've got limited hours. But whatever you can physically put in, do try and map realistic expectations based on this. Realize if you can put in 3 hours a day, you're going to have lower expectations than if you can put in 15, for example. Because if you set unrealistic expectations and think, well, that person next to me just grew a business super quickly and they're uber successful and they're flying, and I'm going to be miserable unless I hit those dizzying heights. Realize maybe they were able to put in more than you. Maybe they had more experience, more talent, whatever it might be. Don't focus on anyone else. Set your own expectations, but definitely be realistic about them. Number 7 is once you feel like you validated your idea, it's really ready to go. You're seeing some interest, some early kind of pre-sales, and everything's kind of looking healthy. I highly advise go Google Jeff Walker's product launch formula, which goes into how to basically have an online launch event around what you're doing. It's pretty much applicable to anything that you're building. And I promise this is not an ad. This is something I've used in my launches for years now, but it talks you through how to essentially build up anticipation and launch with a bang, because there's nothing worse than you've worked on this thing behind the scenes. No one knows about it. So funny enough, when one day out of the blue you go, oh, by the way, check out my new thing, it doesn't fly like you might have hoped for. To condense down what Jeff talks about, he essentially talks about having an event where you build up anticipation over, let's say, 7 to 10 days. You start putting out teaser videos, teaser content, stuff that kind of gets people signing up before the thing's even available. So when you actually launch your thing, you make a big fanfare about it. It's a big event. Everyone's kind of invested and tied into it emotionally. They've been following the story over the weeks building up to your big launch. So when it launches, they're expecting it. They're pretty much there with their wallet out, ready to pay. And there's a huge difference when you execute on that properly versus, like I say, just one day out of the blue mentioning it. It really kind of helps get your thing off to a flying start. Number 8 is think about your distribution. This is kind of covered in the product launch formula, but it goes far beyond that. Essentially, unless you already have a big established audience yourself, which most of you probably won't do, and I certainly didn't in the past, you need to think about getting in front of other people's audiences, other people's customers, their followers, their fans, and so on. And this is so crucial because with any of this online stuff, it's not a case of build it and they will come. You don't just release it. It's not Field of Dreams. You don't just put it out to the world and suddenly customers come flocking, because they won't have heard about it. And unless you've got like $1 million to blow on advertising budget, you better work hard to get in front of other people's audiences. So this can be all kind of ways. It could be that suddenly you're cropping up on every podcast in your industry and you're able to shout about it on there. It could be that you're working with influencers on social media. It could be that you're guest blogging. It could be that you work with affiliate partners and convince them your thing is the best thing since sliced bread, and they should be shouting about it to their audience and getting a commission cut when you launch it to the world. There's a billion ways to do it, but please do not forget the importance of distribution and actually getting in front of existing audiences. Number 9 is start unscalable. This is something which a lot of startup incubators, people like Y Combinator preach, and it is so true, and it's something which I've found. It's kind of similar to my previous point of think one step ahead, not 10. Like, yes, you should be trying to pull off some marketing stunts and JV launches and affiliate partnerships. That stuff's a little more scalable. But please focus on trying to grow your online business one customer at a time. There's so many successful businesses which are absolute giants now, and they pretty much went door to door, campus to campus, signing people up, petitioning them one at a time. You can do a lot of damage that way, and I've seen so many people try to launch their big startup idea and they are just there shouting into the void. They're shouting into space, they're shouting into social media and wondering why no one cares. You can literally go one person at a time, up to them, sell them on the benefits, have a one-on-one conversation, go into sales mode, even if that feels uncomfortable. You have to do it, and you bring people into the fold. And if your thing's good, they tell their friends, they stick around, and suddenly you're off to the races. And finally, number 10, realize that once you've launched your thing, it is only the beginning. All of this work that I've talked about, all of the build up and the idea validation and the big launch event and those early customers and so on, if that all works, and again, the odds are it probably won't. I've done this for years. You've got to keep trying. If it fails, great. Try the next thing. Learn from your mistakes, but realize once your thing is off the ground, the real work begins then, because that's when you almost have to hold on for dear life and react and iterate and try your best not to screw it up, essentially. So once the thing is moving, that's when the real work really will begin, whether that's building a team, expanding, scaling, learning marketing, getting competitors coming at you. That's where the real world of business kicks in, and it goes out of business plans and hypotheses and blueprints. That's where you're really in it. So don't think that the launch event is it and then you can kind of switch off. That's when you really have to start things. So I hope you found these tips helpful. As I say, this is 15 years worth of my experience condensed down into a pretty short video. So rewatch it. If you're unclear of any of the points, do message me. I'll be happy to clarify, but otherwise go Google, go read up on them, because there are books written about some of these single points. There's always more to learn, right? But I wanted to condense down to the very heart of what I think it takes to successfully launch your online business. So good luck, and I believe in it. That sucks. I fucking believe in it. What is that? So good luck, and I sincerely hope that this 10-point checklist can save you a lot of time and a lot of heartache that I've been through myself over the years. As always, I appreciate you so much stopping by, either listening to this on the podcast or watching it on the YouTube show. The fact that you're giving me your time and attention really does mean the world, and I would appreciate it an incredible amount as well if you're able to engage, leave any comments, feedback, and help me to improve this show for all of you guys watching at home. I promise to keep bringing unfiltered value. I want to just bring everything I can for you guys, as much value as I can, all the experiences and screw ups and everything in between. I promise to bring to you via this show. And once again, thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you next week. Today, I'm going to be sharing my 10 essential traits which I believe every successful and, more importantly, decent entrepreneur should possess. And actually, with each trait, give real life examples of how I've applied it and how I think you can too. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. Really appreciate you being here with me. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe right here on YouTube. Remember, tick the little bell icon so that you get proper notifications. I really hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you'll stick around for the upcoming episodes. I really want to keep bringing you as much value as possible. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys soon.